Okay, wrestling family, we're here today with none other than Lee Kemp. I'm extremely excited to have him on and extremely honored. For those of you who don't know Lee Kemp, you should. He's been great in the wrestling community, but he's a three-time NCAA national champion from the University of Wisconsin, Big Ten, Badgers. One of the few folks who have not only come close to beating Dan Gable, but he beat Dan Gable. Guys, he beat Dan Gable. So that tells you the pedigree that he is. He's up there with the greats. He is a living legend himself, and just super excited to have him on. He was one of the youngest Americans to win the world, any world or Olympic medal. 3 world championships, keep me honestly, 3 world championships, okay, and 2 gold medals in the Pan American Games. And what else am I leaving out, Lee, in terms of wrestling accolades?
You know, I'll talk about the bronze medal too in the world, because
right, it matters too, yeah.
Even though it was in first place, it sometimes it's hard to come back and wrestle back. I was already a world champion when I got beat, so
right,
it was tough. But then since we're bragging about,
that's right.
Probably the 2 things, 3, I guess, that I'm most proud of in my career is starting at the top. I'd say it's being inducted into the International Wrestling Hall of Fame.
Right.
I feel like that is a special recognition. There's only 7 Americans inducted into the International Hall of Fame in the wrestling category. You know, Kevin Jackson being one, and maybe another one.
Right.
Schultz, and I mean Gable and a few others. So that I'm proud of. That was in 2008, and also this is something I don't talk about very much, but part of my focus when I went to college, I wanted to be a 4-time national champion, and I didn't accomplish that. But when I lost in the finals my freshman year, I said I don't want to lose again. So by doing that, I knew that would have allowed me to have the most the longest consecutive winning streak in wrestling time, and I accomplished that even though it was never talked about. I had one draw during that time, and I guess in the minds of some journalists that disqualified me from like wins. Right. But one sports writer said to me, "Well, Lee, you didn't actually lose. That's still a winning streak. So maybe, I think you still should have been recognized for having a winning streak." So I had 101 consecutive victories, which was more than Gable's at the time. And then that recognition was bestowed on Cale Sanderson, obviously, when he went completely undefeated. But anyway, so I'm second. I mean, I promote that now. I tell people that, even though journalists don't talk about it, it's true.
It's incredible. It should be promoted.
Collegiate match in 3 years in college. So I was 110-1-1. I lost. The one match I did lose was to a person that wasn't in college. It was to Pete Galea from Iowa State. He had graduated the year before, and then one tie with Kelly Ward. But anyway, that, and then being the youngest American to win a world title at 21, and that was in 1978, and that wasn't broken until Kyle Snyder won the Worlds in 2016. He was 19 years old. So I don't know, that's 30.
And I think Henry Cejudo was up there too, right?
Well,
as one of the youngest.
They started to make a distinction between the Olympics and the World Championships. They're both world championships. One is the Olympics and one is the World Championships. Right. He did win a gold medal in 2008, and he was 4 months younger than me at that time. But from 1978 to 2008, that was 30 years, I guess. So for that amount of time, that I was the youngest American. So those 3 things out of my career, I feel like I had distinguished myself as someone who had accomplished something that had been done before, and that's what everyone's goal is. When you start out, when you you want to do something great, you don't want to just be in it. At least that was my thinking, and so I approached every day of wrestling from the position that I wanted to do something. I wanted to do something special, I guess, in it. So, anyway.
I got a quick question for you regarding that mindset, right? when you want to accomplish something and do something great and commit yourself fully to something, how did you, being so young and having great accomplishments as you grew into a young man and things like that, you continue to accomplish great things. How did you, quote unquote, block out the world's issues or, personal issues or any of the, I'm sure you had challenges and adversities that came your way that had nothing to do with wrestling. How were you able to deal with those things and still have the healthy mental capacity, emotional stability, whatever you felt you needed, physically training and all that stuff to be successful? What do you think is the secret sauce to that for you?
Well, my perspective on it now at 64 years old is very different than it was going through it now. Right. And I talk about this a lot now because one of the things I've shifted to is speaking about my life and the documentary about my life, and I do some motivational speaking. So that provides a topic for me to speak about that gives me an entree into that world of public speaking and motivational speaking.
Yeah.
So I talk about it a lot, so my perspective has changed. And this is something that I'm going to hit you with that you probably weren't expecting. But, to be successful at a really, really high level, you in one thing, you have to be very, very selfish. And that's a difficult word to say in our society, because if you're a selfish person, that's not,
right.
It's not a trait.
It's not looked at as a good quality, right?
Yeah, and we're taught not to be that way, and we shouldn't. But the people that I've been around that are very successful in anything, they're very selfish. And another better way to put it, you can say focused. That's just a nice way to say you're being selfish.
Sure.
I mean, like being focused, being selfish, whatever. It's like you will let nothing distract you. Right down to. Nothing. So, it was tough. I didn't really date in college. I went out and stuff like it, but I never could get focused on something that could possibly distract me from my goals. Like I never drank or anything like that. Whenever any of those temptations were around me, my mind gets very firmly focused on what I really wanted. And people that are like that, they're a little weird. They're because, the first time I saw that personality was in Dan Gable, really. When I was to become a successful wrestler, I had just started. I didn't know anything about wrestling. I just wrestled my first year of varsity, and I was 500 wrestler, had as many wins as losses, as you might imagine. I was a 10th grader, did not make the team as a freshman, made the team as a sophomore. So, and that was the summer of 1972. So, of course, the legend Dan Gable was in front of every one of us of my era.
Yeah.
And I could sense he was very different person. Just his personality. I was at a camp where he was there all week, where you could see him at lunch, see him walking around. It wasn't like, you pop in for an hour, do a clinic, and you're gone. It's that he was just there. And
right.
And then I went home and watched him win his gold medal on ABC. It was a little black and white television. I don't know if there was color TVs back then, 1972, and so I put that together, being with him and then seeing him and his whole demeanor at the games. He got a lot of TV coverage. Frank Gifford, I think, was the announcer then. A lot of the announcers became enamored with Gable and his personality and his work ethic. So he had almost as much airtime as Mark Spitz, as you remember. Mark Spitz was, won 7 gold medals from swimming. So I got to see that, absorb that, and I got to remember what he was like when I was with him. And it made sense to me. If you're going to focus on something, you got to be serious about it. And I saw that with my dad. Again, a little bit long story, but I think all of it's important because it shaped me into what I became. And then let me back up to being adopted. Here's another thing I've thought of, because I talk about this a lot now, but I was 5 years old when I was adopted. So I was in the foster care system. I was institutionalized, basically.
Okay.
At birth. My biological mother gave me up at birth. So, and I've had 3 of my own children. I know what that's like.
Yeah.
the nurturing process, starting the moment the child is born, is nurturing.
Right.
I mean, they're spending time with that child. Never leaves the mother. Basically, you've been there. I mean, the baby's there and the mother the whole time. It never leaves. So I was given up right at birth, literally. And I did talk to my biological mom about that. She said that she did keep me for 3 days before she maybe, she let them know that she couldn't keep me. And since I was born on Christmas Eve, they didn't come right away. So she said she was puzzled by that. She said that, I was with you for 3 days. And then all of a sudden, after Christmas, right before the New Year's, she said, I've seen these people come to take my baby away,
Right.
And so, so when you're institutionalized, I mean, I'm not being held every day. I'm not being taught, you're just, and, you've had kids, you know what that's like, if you're
right.
crying,
Yep.
the baby, it's a mechanism for help. The baby, and you will go there, if nothing else, just to stop the baby from crying. You'll see if they want something to eat, if they're this, or that. But if there's no one coming to save you, you stop crying after a while. So I think I developed a mechanism, and this is just my own head, and I've been reading, research a little bit.
Right.
I have not studied it. I'm no psychologist or child psychologist or anything like that. But I think I learned at a very early age that no one's coming to save you, So you learn to just rely on yourself, to comfort yourself. And then I was adopted, when I was adopted at 5, into an older Black family. They didn't have any kids of their own. So I was an only child with older parents. So there wasn't the playing catch with your dad kind of thing. Although I love my dad, it wasn't, not saying that it was bad or anything, but it just, that part, I never had that. It was a loving home. My mother was loving and all that. But I saw a man who worked hard for what he wanted. He was a no-nonsense kind of a guy. He was, I'm 64, so my dad, you can imagine, coming from the South, Mississippi, it was that era of responsible Black men and women coming from the South back then.
Yeah.
There was no nonsense. You didn't talk back.
Right. Yes, ma'am. Yes, sir.
Absolutely. And that's how I grew up. And I guess you could say, some people now today would say, oh, that's horrible. You were afraid of your father. Well, I think some of our young men and women aren't. I think they need to have a little healthy fear.
Right. And level of respect.
Yeah. But it wasn't anything abusive for sure. And my dad was very loving, but he was no nonsense.
Right.
I saw him take our family from Cleveland, the inner city, right after 1968. I was, what was that? What would have been 12 years old then. So I was old enough to know what was going on when Martin Luther King was assassinated and all that. And every major city in the United States was going through, racial unrest, riots, the whole bit. So my parents moved from Cleveland to Chardon, which, if you don't, it'd be like moving to Southern Illinois from Chicago. Since you went to Illinois, you know what that would be like. Right. And that's what it was like for me going. Chardon was a farming community, all white, basically. Probably our family was one of probably 3 Black families in the whole town of Chardon. So the courage that my parents had to do that was phenomenal. And I look at it now very differently than I did then. Then I was their child, so we went. And I didn't have any say over that. I was young enough that I fit in, I got along. I had no, if someone says, did you ever experience racism? Of course I did. But it wasn't anything that stopped me, actually. There was enough very loving, caring people there in the community that nurtured me. So those very ignorant, naive people that would. Right. It was insignificant. So I was very fortunate. It wasn't flipped the other way, where it was total racism that would have restricted me and made it difficult, and maybe would have given me some hostility. I know a lot of young women did grow up that way as well.
And Lee, I want to park you there just for 1 second. And you're saying so much, and I love it. But I think the fact that level of ignorance didn't stop you or put you in a negative space is great, and it's a tremendous blessing because look where your life went. You had teammates that were of all races, right? You went from high school to a Division I university. You wrestled intercollegiately. You met all kinds of nationalities, people of all shapes and sizes, and that's one thing I love about wrestling is that it brings everybody together, and it doesn't matter what you look like, how tall you are, how short you are, how many muscles you have. It's all about what's in your heart, what's in your mind, right, and what you put out there. So I think you growing up as a child and experiencing a few negative racial issues, and it not debilitating you or stopping you on your quest to becoming Lee Kemp is a tremendous blessing, because honestly, I think at times that can destroy somebody or knock your confidence, self-esteem, and or make you be pushed into a negative situation to where you're not able to achieve all the things that are destined to you, you know? So I'm grateful that you had the mindset that you had. You had the core group of people around you to steer you in the right direction. And that you were able to be Lee Kemp and bring us to this very day where I'm interviewing you and honoring you and respecting you and appreciating not only the things that you've done, but that you continue to do out here. So, yeah.
Thank you. It's a form of. Well, let me interject this. This is about
Yep.
Campbell, who
Okay.
was a professor, and he went to Iowa. So he went from New Jersey to Iowa, similar environment where there were some racial undertones there. And he said that there was a time when he wanted to quit. He said he quit.
Right.
He quit. I'm leaving because of some racial incidents that were happening in Iowa. Dan Gable that approached him and said, "Are you going to let those ignorant people stop you from achieving your goals?"
Right.
Gable did that. So you're right. There was nurturing people in all of our lives that keep us going. I had a parental base that helped me because I saw my parents move to Chardon. They were the parents. They're the ones dealing head on in the community. And in fact, I've got a relationship to this day with the former police chief of Chardon, Carl Henderson.
That's awesome.
Him, I mean, he's older, obviously, you can imagine now, but
right.
Social media has brought us all together. But my dad, I would come home sometimes and I see the police car sitting in our driveway and be like, "Oh my God, what's going on?" Police Chief Henderson and my dad would be sitting on the porch just drinking a cup of coffee together. So my dad had the ability, even though he was a black man from the South, we're talking about, the segregated South. But he was willing and knew that he wanted a better life for himself. And it wasn't that he had to be around white people to have a better life. He wanted a farm. He wanted land, and that just didn't exist in the inner city Cleveland, He would have probably never left the South if the South wasn't so racist, because my parents, when, later in their life, they bought property back in Mississippi. And so later they were going to move back there, which my father passed away before that happened. My mother ended up doing that in the 80s. But the point, though, the real point is that my initial point was there's got to be a goal bigger than your challenges, bigger than your obstacles. And you have to be selfish enough, really. I mean, there is a selfishness to wanting to be great. Not everybody's cut out for that because, you lose relationships because if it comes down to the relationship or your goal, you're picking your goal. And if it comes school, I mean, I passed and I graduated with, B average or whatever, but I could have done a lot better at school.
Sure.
But when it came down to me getting that extra workout in at night at 8, 9 o'clock or studying for that exam, I'm going to go work out. I just take my C on the exam, So you're selfishly picking, always choosing in the side of your goal. And I think the biggest one that's the most difficult one is relationships, whether they're male or female. I mean, I have a lot of guy friends who wanted to go out, wrestlers, and you get labeled. You get labeled as whatever you want to say about that label. I think I'm talking about. Oh, Lee's this or Lee's that.
Right.
He's this or he thinks he's better than everybody else.
Yep.
He can't go out with us. You don't care about that because you focus on your goals, and pretty soon people, when you have when you start having success, people just shut up because they can't say anything
Right.
about it. So,
Or Lee, and I think this is important for listeners, right? Or you do care about it and you let it sidetrack you and potentially ruin your opportunity to reach said goal. Right. So I think this is, and I know for a fact, younger folks will end up watching this episode. So for those folks, I think that's a great lesson to stay on track, because you will get tempted by other things, or somebody might, put on you, project on you what they're doing or what they think is the right thing for you. But you make a determination for yourself. Hey, what you think is best for you, health wise, body wise, training wise, mindset wise, and you stick with that. Stick to your truth so that you can press on towards your goals and not get sidetracked. I think a lot of young folks, especially younger folks, right? You're malleable in your mind. You can be influenced to stay strong and stay true to your goals. So I appreciate you mentioning that, and I hope younger listeners really take heed to that point if you want to be a champion or you want to be successful at anything,
Yeah. And I'll just cite a simple example. Like, I didn't drink one time, even though it was off season. Come on, let's go to beer it. That one time,
I wish I could say the same.
with that one time in my mind, and this is I don't know if this is a great analogy or not, but I mean, I just felt that it was always, I just felt like, I remember reading about John Smith, reading about Gable, reading about some of the workouts. Like, they'd get up in the middle of the night to work out because they felt that their competition definitely wasn't doing that. So that gave them a mental edge.
Right.
And we, from my era, the Gable stories that he would, things like that. So I knew that it gave me a mental edge. And if I ever saw any of my competitors partying, let's just say, I say, okay, I got you there, man. I know that, and I go work harder. That's how my mind worked. It's it just gave me an edge because if I would have lost the matches that I won in overtime and won by 1 point, I wouldn't be sitting here, the Lee Kemp that you're talking to right now. I won all those matches, those matches. My freshman year in the national tournament, I took second. That's great and everything. I lost in a referee's decision overtime, and that sounds really like, okay, Lee's pretty tough. But I had 3 overtime matches in that tournament. The very first match was a referee's decision overtime. So if I didn't get by that match, I wouldn't have. That guy would have lost for sure.
Right.
I would have been out. So, so the edge, the mental edge, is what makes the difference, and you can't gain that in a year. You can't gain that in a few months of training. You gain that over a lifetime of how you live your life. And I saw my father live that way, and I saw good things come to him because of his ability to stay focused. Like he bought a new car about every 10 years. Think about that. You've got, and paid cash. My parents didn't own a credit card. They got a credit card when I went to college because they wanted to come see me compete. So they had to buy an airline ticket, buy one because they didn't have a credit card. Think about that. About that really. In 2021, that was 1976. That didn't make sense to my parents to have a credit card. If I don't have the cash, I'm not going to buy it. Right. So when they bought a car, they saved over a long period of time so they could walk in and pay cash for it. And that's how I watched all that. And that's my mindset. The one day I don't drink in front, the second day I don't, and then a couple years goes by and I'm building that mentality. That discipline. The key word that sticks out of my mind is discipline, financial discipline, but you're speaking about the athletic discipline too, to stick to your goals. But great stuff. I want to segue to Wrestled Away. I had an opportunity to watch Wrestled Away, and I know you. I grew up, my dad knew you, and he always talked about you. He admired you. I showed you a picture not too long ago of you working out with him, and it was just a picture he had tucked away all these years. And when I ran across it, I thought about you, and I took a picture of the photo and sent it to you. But you've been an influence not only in my life, but a lot of other
young people's lives, wrestlers, and just been a huge impact to the wrestling community in general. So I wanted to segue into Wrestled Away. I watched it. It was a powerful movie. You gave insight into your family a bit, your personal life, but also your wrestling career. And I know you've spoken a lot about it already, but what I'll say is just, hey, what is for folks who haven't seen it, definitely go see it. Is it Netflix or Amazon Prime?
It's Amazon Prime and Google Play and pretty much everywhere but Netflix.
Okay, everywhere but Netflix. Guys, go check it out. Wrestled Away, Lee Kemp, Insider documentary, awesome film, and gives even greater insight than he's sharing today. He's a transparent man, honest man, as you can hear today. And the documentary is more of the same. And it just captures how incredible of a not only wrestler, but of a man, of an individual, of a professional that he is. So what's one takeaway that you would say for Wrestled Away? I know it was fun to do a documentary, but what do you want people to know about that movie before they go check it out?
Well, the key thing, and I'll give a little preamble.
Yeah.
When someone wants to do a documentary about you, primarily it's because you're wrestling. So it's flattering. And so you're thinking that all your wrestling accolades are going to be laid out there, which they are. But then the filmmaker did a brilliant job. In fact, before he started, he just spent about 2 weeks with me, just interviewing me.
Mm-hmm.
Get my whole life story before he started to construct what he was going to do. And a filmmaker is very similar to, I hope the filmmakers in the world and of the world that hear this like my analogy. It's almost like if you go to a hairstylist, if you're a woman and a man, but a woman primarily, mm-hmm. and you say, okay, I just want something different. Just give me your professional look on me. And so then when they're all done and you look in the mirror, if you don't like it, what do? It's like, whoa, you're giving that person creative license to do what they're good at. So anyway, when a filmmaker does a documentary, that's what this person was doing. So he kept prodding me for some of the bad things that happened in my life. I started talking about it. He says, that's it, man. We got to put that in the movie. I said, oh, no, I don't want that in the movie. No. And then he just kept, and he convinced me, that Lee, this is your life story. This is something that he said, first of all, you overcame it. So it'd be one thing if you never overcame it, but maybe this story could be something that helps other people. And that's what made me think, okay, because what I've learned is everybody goes through something. It's amazing.
That's right.
I talk to, and I start hearing their story, and I'm thinking, man, that's far worse than what I went through, Yeah. So I'm humbled really sometimes with what some people have to go through. Just like even what T.J. Williams is what he's going through with his family. I mean, what he personally has gone through and what his children or one child is going through, stuff like that. I mean, we all are hit with stuff that if a documentary could be made about any person's life, there's something that could come out that could be a challenge. And the whole key to what I wanted to come through in the documentary, I kept saying over and over again to the filmmaker. There was actually two directors, Scott Hayes and Riley Hanlon. The ultimate thing I wanted it to achieve, they said, Lee, they said, Lee, what do you want this documentary to say about you? Well, I wanted to be something that would show people that they can overcome obstacles, that they can be resilient, that life doesn't always go the way you want it to go. Mm-hmm. There was a lot focused on the boycott, and I didn't even want the boycott in the movie because I thought that was negative. It was something like I didn't even try out for the Olympic trials. That's a whole nother story that, if we have time, I could tell you about that. Because I knew there wasn't going to be an Olympics, so why go to the Olympic trials? Just to have an acknowledgement that you're on an Olympic team that you ahead of time weren't going to the Olympic Games. I didn't even go to the Olympic trials. Mm-hmm. The reason why I went, my coach knew my personality from coaching in college, Dwayne Clevin.
Yeah.
He said, Lee, I think I can get you a special petition. Go to I guess they call it Final X now. It's the new fancy term they come up with. But basically, it's the final trials to make the Olympic team. Okay. My coach said, Lee, you should go make that Olympic team because one day it'll be important to you. That's exactly the words he said. Mm-hmm. And I said, no, coach, it won't be. And he got me. He said, you're going to go let Dave Schultz make that Olympic team. And for the rest of your life, you're going to see his name there as the 1980 Olympic, and it won't be your name. And I said, okay, I'm going. I went to the team. So, but anyway, as you can see, it's resilience.
Yeah.
And having a boycott of something, whether you lose, which my heart breaks for some of the athletes that I knew personally that lost in this 2021 trials, that I knew that their whole life they trained for something and now they're not going to get a chance to do it. Or you have a boycott, like in my case, where you still can't do it. So, or when the national tournament was postponed last year, some of those athletes like Mark Hall and some of those, they missed their senior year.
Right. Which is, man, my heart breaks for those athletes as well. It's crazy. And I know Spencer Lee even gave a shout out to some of his Iowa comrades who missed out, and mentioned that, hey, he was using that as motivation for him this year to compete and win that national title for those folks who missed out on their senior year. But I know a lot of those wrestlers are getting that second chance for next year. Yeah. Which is a good thing, which is a great thing, Yeah. So
the timing was not favorable for some of those athletes, like the seniors last year.
Right. Yeah. And thanks for that. And you mentioned TJ Williams. So for folks who don't know who TJ Williams is, he's I want to say 2 or 3-time national champion at Iowa. He's got the all-time winningest record, and you just kind of touched on an issue that's he's made very public in terms of his son and what he's gone through in terms of chemotherapy and fighting cancer right now. So he's got a big army behind him of family and friends, you and I included. He's like a brother to me. So I just wanted folks to understand what you were referencing in that moment. And the only reason I'm sharing it now is because he's already made it quite public. And anybody who's in this wrestling community who knows TJ knows about this family fight and adversity that they're going through, that I pray to God ends this year. I think he'll be finishing up his treatment this year, Lord willing, and be moving on to be a young boy again without having to fight. So I wanted folks to know that. We'll segue into this, Lee. And that's the new regional training center in California. So I know you're out there on the West Coast. You're doing great things. I know you were training with Uriah Faber. He's an MMA stud and champion. He's got a facility out there, and you were linked up with him. If you wanted to touch on that briefly, you can, and also touch on your role with this new regional training center. I think everybody would love to hear about those two things.
Awesome. First of all, my son, for those of you who have seen the documentary or will see the documentary,
Adam,
my son Adam, right?
Yep.
So it's almost like child abuse when you put your kid in the
because you know how hard it is. It's a tough sport.
And because of one of the hardships that got exposed in my documentary, in addition to the Olympic boycott, was I just went through some really tough times where I wasn't with my kids for a while. And, I had no idea that I would ever be with my kids again, really. So my daughter, she was 16 at the time. My youngest son, Adam, was 10. They wanted to come live with me. I was in the Chicago area. And literally within 2 weeks, I got a call, and all of a sudden they're there. So I had no idea they were going to come live with me. So it took me 2 years to get my son to wrestle, because he didn't want to wrestle, because he wasn't exposed to it. He wasn't with me for a lot of years. And none of my kids knew of my wrestling success. In fact, my daughter, one day, when she first came to live with me, it was really funny. She came home from Fremd High School in Palatine, Illinois, and she was a junior. She said, "Dad, these boys keep coming up to me saying, you're Lee Kim's daughter, and they're making a big deal out of that." She said, "Dad, why are they doing that?" And I said, "Mercedes, did your mom ever tell you that I was a good wrestler?" "No." "I mean, did you ever Google my name or anything?" She said, "No." I mean, as far as they were concerned, man, I was the devil probably. I don't know. marriages are tough. I mean, they're tough anyway, but when they break up, they're even tougher.
Sure.
And so my kids had no idea who I was in the wrestling world.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm trying to get my son to wrestle. And it's brought out in the documentary, so I won't spoil it. But my son ends up wrestling, and he's good. He's actually good. He's got some skills.
Right.
And he tries hard, and he works hard. And long story short, he took fifth in the Illinois State, and you know how tough that is.
Yes, sir.
Like at 160, he took fifth. I was proud of him. That fifth place could have been like first place in my mind.
Right.
You know, he got on the award stand, and he got the opportunity to get a scholarship at Fresno State, which benefited him, but it benefited me too. You know, I was a single dad with him, so naturally, I'm gonna. And my other two children live in California.
Mm-hmm.
That's where their mom was living, and that's where they came from when they came to live with me. So I had an older son too that never came, but my two youngest came to live with me.
Got it.
So I thought, wow, my son's in Fresno. I'll just move out to California. I'll be close to all my kids. And so I didn't have a job. I just moved out, and I thought I'd maybe be in the Fresno area because they were trying to build an RTC there as well. And someone introduced me to Uriah Faber, and Uriah is a great guy, man. I can remember being introduced to him, and he was wondering why is this guy? It was a mutual person that knew both of us. He said, this guy, Kevin, keeps wanting me to meet you. Why do you want to meet me? He was really pretty honest about it. And so, if you know Uriah, he just hit me up to me. He said, well, what do you want? I said, well, I need a job. I want to, can I help out at your mixed martial arts gym?
Right.
In Alpha Male? And he said, sure. He's just a great guy, You know what he said? He says, I don't really need a wrestling coach, but okay. And so for about a year.
Did he know to the extent of your accolades and what you had done?
Yeah.
Okay. So he knew who you were.
You're right.
Right. He did. I remember that.
Yeah. And, with the right coaching, he could have been a great wrestler actually, because he's got all the physical skills as he displayed when he fought in the UFC. And Chad Mendez is one of the staples when he was competing at Team Alpha Male. He was one of the four pillars of Team Alpha Male. It was Uriah, it was Chad Mendez, and a couple others.
Right.
So all good wrestlers. California has great wrestling. So I was able to get an apartment. I was able to establish myself here. I was able to meet some high school coaches. So now I do stuff at some of the high schools. So I've kind of established myself here. And, when one thing happens that's negative, when there's a circumstance that's negative, God opens another door. As you know what I'm talking about with Fresno dropping the program.
Right.
And after 2 years, we're thinking, my son and I, what are we going to do? Mm-hmm. My son was thinking, well, I'll just stay here, keep my scholarship, and graduate, Dad. I mean, he loved wrestling, but he thought, well, and I said, well, let's look and see if you can get in the transfer portal. And he said, okay. And Cal Poly recruited him. Think about it. And now he's at a much better academic institution.
And that's where Chad Mendez went as well, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Cool.
So they've got a wrestling tradition there.
Right.
Cal Poly does an awesome job. I mean, academically, they're they're not Stanford, but they're just real close. Mm-hmm. When people think of Cal Poly, they think of a really high academic institution, and plus they have great wrestling. Mm-hmm. So and it's not as far. It's only like 3 hours. Fresno was about 2.5 hours away. Mm-hmm. San Luis Obispo is about 3.5 hours away from Sacramento, where I live now. And another blessing is that they're opening a regional training center, which you talked about, in San Luis Obispo. It's a standalone facility. I'm going to be a part of it, I'm told, and I don't know what position or capacity, but I feel like I will find a way to be a part of that, just to be involved in wrestling, to be able to try to get back. It'll be a great situation for my son to have. And I've seen pictures of it, what they're going to build. I don't know if you've seen them yet.
Not yet.
Go online and see it. They've got some drawings, some renderings of what they want to create there. They have leased a building that's big enough to house everything. They're just going to renovate it to be this first class state-of-the-art wrestling facility. So I'm totally. They're having the grand opening in August, so we're really soon. I might be moving to San Luis Obispo. Who knows?
Oh, you're gonna move. So how far is that away? How far is the?
2.5 hours. So it's
Okay.
I mean, I guess I could commute for a while until something gets established. I know exactly what role I'll have there, because it'll be a year-round facility. It's gonna serve the colleges that are close by, like, of course, Cal Poly, but Bakersfield, Cal Baptist, maybe.
Yeah, that's huge.
You know,
That's huge.
and the high schools in the 50-mile radius. So there's a lot of high schools that
Right.
serve as well.
So there's and obviously the Olympic trials just ended recently, and you see the caliber of wrestling America is churning out, and we're on an upswing. You know, these guys are competing at an extremely high level. They're leading in the world in terms of success. I mean, they're winning these overseas tournaments and these world championships, and I think it's a beautiful thing. So this regional training center on the West Coast is only going to help strengthen wrestling here in America even more. So with you being one of those great wrestling minds, a part of that program and that facility, and whoever comes through there, that can only be a good thing. So I'm happy for you, and I think that's a great situation, and a great place for you to be, and a lot of folks are going to benefit from that for sure. Do you know the coaching staff that they're trying to set up there to help facilitate things at that regional training center?
Sure. Well, the head coach at Cal Poly is John Cerritos. He's going to be vocal and involved. Of course, he's kind of the point person.
Gotcha.
It appears like.
Mm-hmm.
You know, there's huge fundraising efforts. He's there. He's organizing, orchestrating a lot of it, because obviously it serves to benefit his program immensely.
Mm-hmm.
But then there's some other key people in the area, like John Azevedo, for instance, another Olympian. We were on the Olympic team at the same time in 1980. He was a national champion at Bakersfield. He lives obviously in the area of San Luis Obispo. So John Azevedo, myself, and then there's probably other coaches that I'm probably not remembering right at the moment that are in the area. There's Aaron Sneed, who is the CEO of Meathead Movers. He's a business entrepreneur who created one of the largest moving companies based there, and he's a former wrestler. He lives there, and he's putting a lot of his own personal energy and time and money into the whole thing as well.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm sure it will attract a lot of high quality caliber coaches for sure.
Absolutely. These are exciting times. So that's great. So I've enjoyed this conversation. It was originally supposed to be 30, but I'm so glad that we ran over. And I might turn this into 2 episodes. I might just have to. You know, we got to keep the content and the quality. We got to keep it quality. So I appreciate your time, but I do want to respect it. Thank you so much for coming on, guys, listeners. This is Wrestling Fan Podcast. You'll get insight. Hopefully you're inspired, you're motivated, you're encouraged. And I'm blessed and honored to have Lee Kemp on as a special guest to share his story. Go check out Wrestled Away if you haven't done so already. You'll be inspired even more. Go chase your goals, go chase your dreams. Follow Wrestling Fan Podcast on Instagram. And Lee, you have a website, you have products as well. Where can folks go to learn more about Lee Kemp? Is it leekemp.com and some of the product lines that you have? Yes,
it's leekemp.com.
Okay.
And I've got a book that I wrote. It's a motivational book, a very short motivational quote. Some are ones that motivated me when I was a young person, even as an adult. I have quotes in there that are from athletic arenas. Some are from other arenas, business arenas. It's just a book that could help. You can open it up to any page and find some motivation. So that's called
Awesome.
And then
Awesome.
a video series called Your Greatest Season.
Say the name of the book again. I think I was talking over you. I apologize.
Oh, the book is called Winning Gold.
Winning Gold. Winning gold, everyone. Okay, great.
Yep. And then the video series is called Your Greatest Season. It's a set of 16 separate videos, and it's more of a mental training. It's
Absolutely.
the mindset that I went through to go from just a beginning wrestler to an undefeated state champion. That transition set me up mentally for the rest of my life in terms of my career and some of the hardships that I've gone through and overcame.
Right.
All that was formulated during those years of trying to figure out how to win on the wrestling mat. So yes, thank you so much.
Absolutely. The honor and the pleasure is mine. Guys, I'm your host, Cassio Pero, former All-American, not quite where Lee Kemp accomplished, but honored to be in this wrestling community. I hope you guys enjoyed listening, and please feel free. We're going to have a lot more content for you guys at Wrestling Fam Podcast, so you'll be hearing from us soon. Thank you so much, Lee Kemp. I'm gracious. I'm appreciative. Be blessed, and we will talk very soon, okay? Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Yes, sir. All right, wrestling family, happy to be here today. I have an extremely special guest I'm honored to have on, and it is none other than Mr. Lee Kemp. For those of you who aren't 100% familiar with Lee Kemp, I just want to say just a few things of his accomplishments, what he's done, what he's meant to the sport of wrestling, and much more. And honestly, I can't wait to get into this conversation with him. But for those of you who aren't super familiar, he's a 3-time national champion from the University of Illinois. He's one of the few folks who have ever not only come close to beating Dan Gable, but beat Dan Gable. Yeah, go ahead, Lee.
You said Illinois, so maybe.
That's University of Wisconsin. My apologies. That's huge mistakes. He's a Badger.
You might want to just start again. That's all. All
right, I'll start over. Good call. All right, wrestling. Go say what? We could have just kept it. Honestly, I don't care if I make a mistake, but
I won't do that again.
No, you're fine. Like, if I wanted you to do that, like, you're from Wisconsin. I said something I went to U of I. I went to Illinois. All right, listen, I'll just start fresh because I can edit this too. So.
Okay, I know that. I should have probably.
Yeah, no worries.